Hey guys, how's it going? Ultimate Kahuna here. So we're going to be doing some live readings of some Iron Age stories that I was sent on Twitter, on Gilded, and anonymously with threatening notes in the mail. How's everybody doing? Oh, I was trying to figure out how to add a nice little clip to the beginning of the stream, make it nice and professional. Alas, I didn't let anybody know I was going to be doing this stream, so let me find a way to do that real quick. Let's go. Let's go. Do. Yo, more people. Okay, that's good enough. Fuck it. All right. So, what we'll be reading today first is going to be sent by Tyras Mikhail. Sorry if I said that wrong. And it's going to be a portion of, let's see, Masks. Yeah, Masks of Steel. And he has this on Royal Road. I know some of us, including maybe a certain man named James, has uploaded stories on there. But alas, this is what we're going to be doing. Yo, Skunks, what's up, brother? All right, let's see what this is exactly. I think most of what's on Royal Road is going to be more like fantasy stories. You know what I mean, brother? So I'll get some good fantasy copyright-free music in the background. Let's have something nice. Mimi. Wonderful was the first thing I picked. Boom. How's that? Skunks, can you hear that okay? Ah, there we go. All right, this is the chapter 1 of Masks of Steel by Tyras Mikhail. And this is chapter 1, Pugilism. He expected it didn't take very long. The larger muskox rushed for his opponent, attempting to corner the moose and finish him off with a handful of wild, crushing blows, like he had done with all of his crewmates that had faced him thus far. But the moose dodged the heavy brute, almost causing the ox to step out of the ring and risk disqualification several times. The cheers of 20 men and 2 women, all in the various stages of inebriation, was mostly drowned out by the deafening whoop of the airship's 4 steam engines. It was a constant, deep mechanical howl, like the roar of a great metal dragon forever stretched out. The fact that the ship itself was actually some 20 meters above was a constant above them, and they were all non-powered deck held to the ship by a massive mast-like steel rod that went through the center of the deck, and by 4 chains roughly the thickness of a class 4 mammal's arm. Didn't seem to make a difference in the sound's intensity. The gas bladder was massive, nearly 100 meters in length. The central gondola connected by a rope ladder to the deck, looking almost like a speck upon a champagne beige canvas. 4 steel walkways also spidered out from the gondola to each of the 4 engine compartments, from which one could, in theory at least, solve the most pressing issues in case of engine failure to allow the crew to safely make a forced landing. 4 engines. Good. Inspector Tyras Malako had been one of the first mammals on board an airship. His unit, alongside 5 infantry and 2 artillery battalions, flying over to flank the Lunist advanced towards the Osnisian capital. Sorry, these are some interesting fantasy words here. Smashing the enemy. Coming across bewildered troops and disorganized transport vehicles who weren't expecting any kind of fighting for another few dozen miles. They had no defenses set up, no trenches dug in, not even a way to give the feeblest resistance against the flying metal behemoths, dropping bombs and troops on their position. No weapon designer could have ever predicted the need to shoot down anything higher or more resilient than dragon-mounted cavalry, which couldn't fly higher than a few hundred meters while in combat, and which a single well-placed rifle bullet could bring down. For the For the few months which Osnia alone possessed airships, the Lunists may as well have been fighting an alien species, until Luna spies got their hands on the blueprints, and a lucky artillery shell brought down an airship bombing a Lunist city. After which, it only took them a few months to have their own flying behemoths airborne. It was back to an all-out slugging match again. Still, the airship had saved his nation, and helped mend it after the war was over, allowing trade and travel at an unprecedented pace. A single ship capable of taking hundreds of passengers and dozens of tons of cargo across the world in a mere 2 weeks. And unlike its seafaring cousin, it mattered little if there was land or sea below it, so long as it had somewhere to refuel. It was also statistically much safer than ocean or land travel. Little wonder, as unlike sea or earth, pirates and outlaws cannot stay in the air indefinitely. And he probably had as much time on board airships as the airmen that were currently cheering on the two fighters. Yet he still had to overcome a chill of nervousness and a cold tendril of dread wishing to pull him back each time he stepped on one. Which was why he was happy this particular ship had 4 engines, mostly to allow it to withstand its monster 200-ton maximum load, each of them roaring merrily away above him, bellowing thick plumes of cotton candy-like white smoke into the fiery orange clouds of sunset. If one engine should malfunction, you still had 75% of your power to land somewhere safe. While with most airships that had 2, or even only 1 engine for smaller craft, you really couldn't do much of anything except hope there was smooth ground below, and that the air bladder didn't deflate too rapidly. At least on a seafaring ship, one had life rafts, or even the option of holding on to a piece of timber and hope there was shore or another ship nearby. There we go. No music for you, huh? What's going on then? Let me double check my connection. This has been a little funky recently. Can you hear it now? I can hear it here, but I can't hear it. If you guys can't hear it, then I can just turn it off. It's too bad if you can't hear it. It's actually pretty good. Okay, good. Let's see where we were. The rules were simple, standard boxing rules, except that whoever knocked his opponents down only once, or forced them out of the ring, consisting of a white chalk circle measuring 5 meters in diameter, won. After all, even drunken airmen recognized the need to limit injuries among their crew, as participation required betting. Tyrus had wagered 100 black krata and a tin of sugary biscuits he'd bought in port for personal consumption. The first mate, whom the captain had assigned as the unofficial bookkeeper, looked almost lustfully at Tyrus's ebony cane. The Saga's beady eyes analyzing the masterfully engraved dragon head with tiny red jewels for eyes, embellished upon the pure silver handle. He probably expected Tyrus to be as careless and daring with his gambling as his fellow airmen and wager that priceless art piece. He'd seen the crew wager and lose jewelry they'd bought in port for their sweethearts, expensive leather-bound books, fine tobacco, hefty coin pouches, or large notes. And few of the crew seemed to be well off enough that such things could be easily replaced. He was analyzing the moose fighter closely. He could win this, he knew. He'd been watching him closely since the first fight. The man was well-muscled in a way that was more suggestive of frequent and disciplined physical exercise rather than manual labor, like the other denizens of this ship, with muscles built like from an anatomy book, mostly lacking fat, and his hooves lacked the chips and scratches which hoofed mammals like he had in place of calluses as the result of blue-collar work. He suspected the moose was a military man. Perhaps he even fought in the Burning Steel War. A suspicion confirmed once he'd seen his fighting style a couple of days earlier. The footwork was that of a knife fighter, never planting his feet, moving constantly, dodging rather than blocking, and keeping a much broader distance than the other fighters with his nature-granted long limbs, which drew jeers and accusations of cowardice from the spectators who had wagered against him. He didn't hit often, dodging, weaving, and dancing around his opponent, until a window showed itself, and he delivered 2 or 3 crushing blows to the nose, chin, and solar plex, ribs or liver, his gloved fists hitting with the precision and power of a knife, then retreating before his opponent could properly even register that he was being hit. To the Ox's credit, he lasted the longest of all of his opponents. After getting caught by the rival pugilist's knife-like furies 4 times in a row, he tried keeping his distance himself. He even getting a few hits in, something only 2 other fighters in the 2-day duration of the tournament had managed. Yet the knife fighter had caught on to the rudimentary trick quickly, and after a particularly clumsy jab on the Ox's part, the moose swept the attacking hand away, delivering a lightning-fast jab to the eye meant more to daze and distract than to hurt. Then it was over. In the blink of an eye, the moose was chest to chest with his opponent, trapping his right arm and delivering 3 uppercuts to the man's liver, as swift and powerful as artillery shots. The dull sound of gloved-hooved fists hitting flesh intermingled with the engines like a stormy wave, breaking upon the sand and rock of a wild beach, sending a slight chill down the back of Tyrus's neck. No matter how bulked up one was with muscle and fat, there was no softening a liver shot. There we go. Yo, Pritchard Pub, what up? Who's using the account right now? Is that you, Katie, or is that AC? Either way, thanks for watching, guys. If anyone has a suggestion or wants me to read something of theirs, just send me a message or leave something in the chat. Yo, Chatsu, how's it going, man? What's up, brother? Woo! Yeah, that was a fun stream for Royce's birthday, wasn't it? I had a lot of people on there. Had a whole bunch of trolls come in, giving him money of all things. That's weird. All the trolls I get on my channels, they just call me names and tell me I have the body of a fatty fish. Oh, shoot. I'll hop back to it. Chatsu, I think you might have sent me something. If you did, I'll read that next. How about that, buddy? All right, let's see where we're at. A sharp growl of pain permeated the glacial air of 1,500 meters of altitude. The cheers and jeers both stopped a second before the bovidized knee touched wood. He'd lost. Functionally, when he threw the cloddish punch, officially, once his legs couldn't support him anymore. Yet he was too proud to show it. Gritting his flat teeth, only taking a knee rather than letting himself fall flat on the floor. Knockout! It's over! The referee, a lanky jackrabbit with a powerful voice which belied his brittle frame, announced. Half of the crowd cheered and clapped, half quietly cursed and stomped their way back to their duties. Tyrus was fairly certain a good half of the airmen wouldn't be getting a warm welcome from their wives once back home. Probably would have to temper their drinking once in port, simply owing to the hole now burned in their purses. The moose smirked, took a bow before those still applauding, more relieved they hadn't lost a week's wages, and more from that than genuine admiration. Not unlike a stage dancer, he then turned towards the recovering ox and promptly helped him up, giving a reassuring pat on his meaty shoulder. You did all right, old boy, he said with a white-toothed grin showing. I pulled my punches, so just take advantage of your relief of duties and lie down. Still, I'd stay away from the grog and stick to lemonade for a few days. Tyrus had seen similar behavior with all of his other defeated opponents. Showman as he wasn't one to deride or sneer at a crushed adversary, like many back alley brawlers. There we go. "Ayo, matey!" He heard a voice coming from his right, and turned to see the small, wiry frame of the first mate. The queer, bloated nostrils characteristic of the sagas, about level with his chest, and the thin, ringed horns just about higher than Tyrus's shoulders. As alert as he was, it was little wonder he hadn't noticed the saga approaching over the buzz of the crowd, especially from his right. An irksome itch from within his right eye socket reminded him of the reason. "You're up against I'm in 2 hours. Then we pull into port and come morn." The petite herbivore looked around conspiratorially. "Captain thinks you'll lose, on account of the moose being bigger. Just as swift, and well, your eye." He winced in sympathy. That awful, pitying sympathy. "But I says he's a right knucklehead. You got fires in you. You don't let up. And I've been seeing you through scrapes, and know the matters more. Made a pretty penny betting on ye. I thinking of dumping it on the final hour about double me winnings." He winked. Tyrus smirked and lightly slapped the herbivore on his thin shoulder. "I'd advise against that, my friend. Not that I lack the faith in the adequacy of my pugilism, but that gentleman and I are warriors of a similar caliber. It is unwise to drop all your winnings on a 50-50 chance. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but you've won 500 black krata, 5 full crowns, off of me. Judging by your dispirited reaction at the end of 3 bouts I took no part in, you possibly lost a crown, leaving you with 400 krata. Pray, bet only a fourth of that. Or better yet, leave well enough alone. I'm certain your wife would appreciate your restraint." The air sailor's eyes widened, then were shamefully downcast. He said or asked nothing. It was easy enough to form the conclusions, and one needn't be a police inspector to do so. By how animated he had been during the fights, with joy and relief, and despair at a fighter's defeat, he was a man to stake an entire week's wages on betting. His work clothes were clean, yet he was the only airman he'd seen in the same clothes throughout the trip. And his watch chain lacked the timepiece meant to be its permanent companion. The clothes and watch were doubtlessly sold or pawned to maintain his gambling illness and provide for his family with anything resembling dignity, whom he doubtlessly had and cared for, if the well-polished yet aged silver and black ring on his finger was anything to go by. There you go. Woo! Yeah, I saw you earlier, Pritchard. Pub, let's see. Yeah. Let's jump you over here. Yeah, your first comment was at 8:18. No, it's fantastic. How are you guys doing? Are you guys going to stream again here soon? All right, we'll get back to it. Oh, yep. All right, let's see. He bid the airmen farewell and went back to the crew quarters. Yo! Do you guys have a theme? Are you guys playing a game? You guys have a special guest? What's going on there? Hold on, just let me grab my nuts. Oh no, it won't fit over my headphones. There we go. Just gotta adjust my nuts here. Oh, shoot. Alright, let's get back to it. He bid the airmen farewell, went back to the crew quarters, going down a deck into the gloomy interior of bare metal and rough wood, illuminated by a pale gas lamp here or there. He heard the hatch above him open once again, and judging by the heavy-hoofed pace and pained groan, it was the defeated ox. Excused from his duties to nurse his pains, everyone else was on the upper deck, either readying the ship for landing in a few hours, or engaging in dice or other entertainment while enjoying the open air. Sweet. Oh my gosh. Well, I'll say it better. Rough wood. Don't clip that. All right, let's see. Stepping into the crew quarters, he went past the rows of well-worn bunk beds and sat on a cot stretched out in the far corner for the singular extra passenger. A small footlocker next to it contained all of the worldly possessions he had taken on his journey. He trusted that the lock was strong enough to deter the rudimentary lock-picking skills a few airmen doubtlessly had, and the captain had made it abundantly clear that if any man was so much as touched their guests' belongings, their pay for 1 month would be docked, and they would receive 30 lashes in front of the crew. Tyras unlocked the box and retrieved a small gas lamp and a fur trimming kit. With that, he walked into the adjoining bathroom, which lacked even the basest privacy. With a few rows of squat pans, which were little more than an open pipe in the floor which disposed of waste out of the airship, and a row of showers, to which each man only had 2 minutes a day due to the limited water supply. The smell was repugnant, and Tyrus went through it all with his snout in... Hello? Oh, my sound gave out for a second. That was weird. Upon reaching the row of sinks, he picked up where one dirty, cracked reflective thing above it. It should be called a mirror, and set the lamp down, lighting it. The cracked glass showed an unfinished jigsaw puzzle of the steppe lion's face. A single wood-brown eye stared back at him, its twin brother glinting sadly and colorlessly in the dying sunset-like glare of the lamplight. The right silver eye interrupted 2 parallel lines that went from his forehead, following a path of what used to be his eye, ending just above his jawline. It was 7 years old, yet it was still angry and red, surrounded by a millimeter or so of soft, bare pink flesh, where his pristine silver fur refused to grow. Every look in the mirror, every itch under his quote-unquote eye, every time he had to be a little more careful on the street, or slammed his shoulder into a doorframe due to his now poorer depth perception, was a reminder of those hellish 3 days and nights. Every time, his excellent memory for once was his disadvantage, and made him remember one more dreadful fact about his ordeal. Now, he remembered the trifling detail of how torn and bloody his calves were from constantly running into thorny bushes, partially from panic, partially from his body having no time to adjust to the half loss of one of his 5 senses. Confusing flashes, meaningless colored shapes vying for dominance within the singular left eye that now had him see through the horror. His yet intact hearing picked up the eager howls and almost silent patter of feet that moved way faster than he could hope to. "Stop," he breathed, and the memory mercifully dispersed. Oh my gosh, guys. Chat too, trust me, it is the internet. Welcome to the internet. What would you prefer? I know how it operates. Let's see. His reflection seemed brighter somehow, and he allowed himself a smile, bringing out the streaks of champagne beige fur that went alongside his cheekbones and jawline. He was a far taller, leaner build than most of his species, standing 2.5 meters tall, weighing no more than 110 kilos, yet his shoulders were broad and square, coming up his slight torso into a pronounced V shape, which spoke to strength beyond his size. Despite his horrid scar, he'd been called handsome by many a young lady of size and species similar to his. Yet, his heart was already set. He twirled the silver and black ring on his finger, letting it chase away the last of the darkness clawing at his thoughts. With that, he set about grooming himself as he always did before each battle. Great or small, vital or inconsequential. It wasn't tied to any particular custom of his people, yet he felt it was the right thing to do, cleaning his body and mind before a confrontation, a sign of respect to both himself and his adversary. Oh, yeah, no, it's all that Hawaiian camouflage here. So, oh yeah, that's something funny too. So, Katie, I assume you've been to Hawaii at least in passing because of your old Oh, bro. How does your husband ever get anything done? You're a riot. But in Hawaii, there's this weird fashion trend. There's a really big, like, it's half traditional American ghetto, half like a third redneck, and then a third emo style. And it's this weird custom. What? You've never been? Bro, everybody, like, you and Andy would burn really bad, but you guys need to go, seriously. But yeah. No, there's this weird style. It's like I said, like a third ghetto, a third like American Western, or like kind of ghetto white Western, and then a third emo style. And that's where this line of clothing comes from. I don't wear like the face makeup and the eyeliner like they do when they wear it, but it's really weird to see like a goth girl, Hawaiian girl, just on a beach somewhere over there, dressed in like the long black jeans and like the colored hair and the whole thing. In the sun. Yeah, you guys are some white folks. Not sure if you noticed, but you guys are very white. Yeah, that's true. But no, you guys do need. Oh, really? Huh. I wouldn't have expected that. Maybe it's probably the lighting too. It doesn't help you guys. Like me, this is about as white as I get. Most of the time, like during summer, I'm darker than some of my old Mexican friends. But yeah, no, I'm glad you guys don't get effed up by the sun. I figured you guys might. You roll very white-looking individuals. Yeah, I actually scratch that. You have mentioned that before. That's wild. I wouldn't have guessed. That's cool. But alas, I will finish this story. Gosh darn it. Yeah. There's a lot of Norwegian people of a certain age range that are like 100%. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just because no one left their country for a long time. But no, very tall people. Very tall white people. All right. He barely dodged the thickly gloved hoof, feeling his fur swish back from the blows, each as swift as a lunge from a viper. He growled, keeping his guard up to defend against the longer jabs of his opponent, making him back off as one particularly good deflection promised a counterattack. Tyrus gritted his teeth. The second round was nearing its conclusion. Longer than any fights in this spit and sawdust flying pub had lasted. They'd hardly laid gloves on each other. Tyrus was too quick and his defense too fortified, while his servine opponent used tree-length jabs and swift legs to dance around his smaller, yet meaner opponents. It was like trying to fight a spearman with a dagger. A thought flashed through his mind to use his forte and reach out to read the man's feelings and intentions. Yet he chased the thought as quickly as it had come. No, he was a gentleman, and a gentleman did not use concealed magic to get the upper paw. He saved that for situations of mortal combat, where gentlemanly manners led to a back guard's blade in the throat. If he was to win this bout of most honorable sports, he would do so on equal footing. His patron goddess, Sapistia, was not the goddess of wisdom, but also justice and honor. Actually, yeah, that's fair. Yet there you'd like say one innocuous opinion in one of the most liberal states in the Union, which is Hawaii. And you're like, a witch! If she weighs as much as a duck, she's a witch! Okay, that's not part of the book. Hold on. Get my good. Yeah, I'll tell you all the good places to go. Basically any island besides Oahu. It's busy. It's like the Vegas of Hawaii. It has some cool stuff, but it's really shitty. I got better. Oh, I love that freaking movie, dude. We are the knights who say, brave Sir Robin ran away. Yeah, no, that would be cool. You guys are a ways. Like, where are you guys again? Like Midwest? Don't answer if you don't want to. I'm just trying to remember. I think Andy told me at some point, but everybody's like, there's a huge portion of people in the Iron Age who are down in Florida, Texas, and surrounding Texans, southern kind of states. And like, there's only 3 people I know of, or no, 4 people I know of, including myself, in the Iron Age in Washington. Maji's basically Canadian, and then a couple others are like on the east side of the state. I think there's one that lives close. You must cut down the largest tree in the forest with a herring. Oh, Minnesota. I love Minnesotas. They're my favorite. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know much about Minnesota other than what I learned watching the movie Iron Will back in the day, which was a great movie, but that's about all I know. I get it's a lot of snow. That's all I know. All right, I'll at least get through a paragraph of this. Minnesota. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The familiar feeling of nausea and disorientation at suddenly having his field of view doubled washed over him. For but a moment seeming to his new sight that the airship had capsized, yet in the moment after, all was clear again. His right side vision returned, albeit with a smoky blue tint, as if he was seeing the world through someone else's eye, which Tyrus reminded himself was exactly the case. To his credit, his opponent had not pressed the full advantage of Tyrus's quite liberal blind spot. While barely dodging another jab, the White Lion did something quite unexpected. He switched from a left-handed to a right-handed stance. Before the moose had time to acknowledge the unexpected change, the lion lashed out. Left fist instead of right, driving rapid stinging jabs, while the right remained in reserve for a more powerful blow. The two caught his opponent in the chin and the cheek with a wet thud. Then Tyrus ducked under the responding hook and hit 2 uppercuts in the ribs, feeling meat and bone shift. With a strangled gasp of pain, the man attempted a thuggish backhanded aim for Tyrus's silver eye, which was promptly blocked. A confused grunt escaped the moose as to how the one-eyed man had seen it coming before the same blocking hand launched into the jaw. A flurry of furious rights and lefts followed, driving him a few inches from the radius of the chalk circle. He feinted to his right, only to drive a brutal left cross into the protruding snout, switching to the southpaw stance once again, and delivering another series of powerful body shots meant to empty the lungs and twist the insides. One more good punch, and he was done for. Oh, yeah. No, you guys get all cold, too, because, yeah, not Texas, but Minnesota. My grandpa, he talked about growing up in North Dakota. It's like, yep, we'll get down to negative 20 and 40 pretty much every year. I don't remember a year it didn't. We'd have snow, we'd have trees on the edge of our property to keep the snow from piling up on the house. Instead, we'd create about a 30 or 40 foot slope up from the top of the trees going down. Dude, I like Texas, I don't know, freedom. That sounds nice, Chatsu. I'm not gonna lie, man. There's so many cool people down in Texas. The problem is I'm a bit of a heat bitch. I can't do heat. It's just not what it's not what my body's meant for. Yo, AC, that sounds like music lyrics. Empty my lungs. Ow. No, I love freedom. I love pew pews. Love all the people there. I just the heat, dude. I'm such a baby back bitch. I honestly. But dude, yeah, no, like how do I explain this? When I went to Alaska maybe 2 years ago, I was walking around in between -8 and 5 degrees in a tank top most of the time. That's just how I am, man. I've always been that way. Like everyone's like, "Oh, it's so cold." I'm like, "Yeah, not really." Just I put on I stopped wearing shorts at work because customers were getting uncomfortable. They thought I was going to get sick, and I got tired of having to explain myself. Yeah. No, I'm the same way, man. Like I like the weight of a blanket, but I don't like being hot. So it's always like some jumbled mess where I'm only half covered. I feel you, AC. Okay, I'll get through at least a couple more paragraphs. We're almost done with this one. It was then that something quite irregular occurred. His right fist halfway descended in an arc like a headman's axe, which would hurl the moose's head back and force him out of the circle. But then, he wasn't there anymore. His gloved paw struck empty air. With nothing to pause his momentum, he went forward, right as a sledgehammer struck his gut. His innards reeved painfully, and he tasted bile. He instinctively covered up, yet it made no difference. Really, it had been a clumsy punch, and he had managed to duck below the worst of it and only brushed his forehead, the pain superficial. Yet it had been enough. In his struggle to keep his balance, his left foot went hard backwards. He understood his mistake before the referee could ejaculate, "Out!" Applause erupted. Tyrus had been too singularly engaged by the fight to realize the crew's usual cheers and jeers had gone silent before the conclusion. All that had been audible being the blood pounding in his ears, the thump of fists on flesh, and the endless, constant, mighty, mechanical growl of the ship's engines. Now, the airmen were clapping with restrained ardor of a opera hall audience, congratulating both warriors. The moose stood before him, one ham-sized mitt clutching bruised ribs, both snouts nostrils bleeding. Yet he remained as erect and dignified as a soldier, immortalized in stone at his emperor's tomb. Tyrus felt the beginnings of a shinner on his left eyebrow, and a warm, thin trail of salty liquid out of the corner of his maw. Thankfully, trying his fangs out with his tongue felt none out of place. In spite of his metal-tasting, bloodied gums, the burning in his muscles now made itself known, and he released the sight of his right eye, watching sadly as half his world disappeared into blackness once more. And the expected headache and nausea from using his fortitude abilities had no delay, even for something as banal as seeing normally. He took in a deep breath of the heavenly air that was found at 1,500 meters. Resting but for a moment, his singular eye on the backdrop of the fiery sunset clouds, which for all its beauty reminded him of the burning cityscape of Lexadava, a whitewashed ancient buildings blazing away in a final defiant act of holy beauty, after being shelled for 2 weeks straight by its own army in preparation for reconquest. He shook his head, chasing away the grisly memory. He ripped his gloves off and let them fall to the ground. His opponent did likewise. He looked up to the man who was a half head taller and many times more if one counted the great antlers he refused to trim, and shook his hands. "Congratulations, good sir. Well-deserved victory." "Thank you for the challenge. I'll tell you the truth, really. I didn't know how this fight should have ended if we were under different circumstances. And that is the end. Oh no. Like Kahuna's. Oh, like you talking about my nuts? Anyway, so this has been the chapter 1 of Masks of Steel, Pugilism by Tyrus McHale. You can find it on Royal Road. And I'll see if I can grab that little linky real quick. Hey, you guys want a little linky like? Hmm? And now let's see. Where are you at, Chatsu? Chatsy, did you remind me? Did you send me the your story on Gilded, or did you send it to me on Twitter, on Twix? You might have sent it to me on Twix. I'll look through it. I'll look through them real quick. Mm-hmm. Chatsu. Where are you at? There you go. Yeah, I see you, Chatsu. There we go. There you go, Chatsu. Get to read, a tale from the Trilateral Realms, man. Exciting. I haven't read this before. I'm excited. All right, so story number 2. It's story number 2 of my reading tonight. It is story number 3 from the Trilateral Realms by Chatsu. A Creature Takes Flight. Now, Chatsu, is this a fantasy story? I assume it is, but I want to know. I want to know what kind of music to play in the background so that I can do your story justice. Ooh. I think I know. We gotta do poem. I know what to do. We'll go with this. Let's try this real quick. There we go. No. We'll skip the commercial, and then we will have music once again. There we go. Oh, shoot. Come on. Stay open. There we go. Above ancient forests that stretch far up high, a wondrous creature soars through the sky. Though your eyes may observe the cast of a cat, its wingspan resembles the build of a bat. Its obsidian fur should take stealth in the dark, if not for the white stripe, as loud as its bark. From the aft of its tail to the tip of its nose, like an arrow that points at wherever it goes. When grown, it will reach the size that is grand, but for now, it can fit in the palm of your hand. Blissful it glides above pillowy clouds, a sight of great comfort that thankfully shrouds. This innocent creature does hardly not know of the sinister danger that lurks down below. In pursuit of his prey, clothed all in black, a hunter has secretly followed its track. The hat on its head, as wide as is thin, conceals eyes up above the blue of his skin. No horse can hope to gallop at the pace that he runs, nor imagine the laws that the speed of him shuns. For 3 days and nights he has kept at this pace. The creature naive it is caught in a race. At last it descends to recover its strength, drained from its journey's significant length. Twisting its body and craning its head, a branch is soon spotted that can act as its bed. Gliding its way to a wide open space, it lands on the tree with an elegant grace. Tucking its feet up to be close to its chest, an innocent creature commences its rest. At the bottom, the hunter with nerves made of stone rejoices his prospect has finally shown. With silence and haste, he now reaches his palm and takes hold of 2 knives with relative calm. Son of a... Oh, it was going so good. Okay, there we go. Sorry. The music really helps. Higher and higher he creeps evermore, closing the gap to his slumbering score. Soon his long hounding will come to an end. Out of the forest the hunter will wend. Abruptly, a strong gust blows from the north and causes the branches to creak back and forth. One of the smaller limbs breaks with a snap and jostles the creature awake from its nap. The hunter, so close to his magical prize, finds himself meeting the white of its eyes. The creature attempts to shoot flames at its mark, but the young beast can only manage a spark. It pushes itself back into the air, thankful that fate has prevented its snare. The spark left behind that the creature has spewed crackles on wood that now acts as its food. One knife in the tree and a boot turned in place. The hunter cascades at a quickening pace. As he meets the ground from his dangerous drop, above booms the sound of a deafening pop. He looks up to the sky and quickly takes gaze of a plummeting branch that has been set ablaze. Unmoving, he lashes his arm like a whip and catches the torch in his powerful grip. The raging fire now chars at the limb, melts through his glove, but it does not burn him. The hunter now frowns, for he knows what's been done. He walks to the source, for it's pointless to run. As he comes to a clearing, he sees his defeat in the form of the proof of a daring retreat. The sparkling dust he sees lazily rain, the remains of a creature that is ever his bane. He'll recover the trail, of this he is certain, that he'll be the one who will close on its curtain. Alas, he turns back, for the journey is long, and his lungs find their way to deliver his song. As the singing grows faint, till he's barely a shape, for now a sly creature has made its escape. Yo! Yo, Chatsu, dude, that's so sick. I love that story, man. I love that. I love this. That's what I love about poetry. It breaks down a story to its basic elements. There's no flair. It's just clever language telling the bare bones of a story, and I love that. Now, I'm no trippy soul here. I can't break down the math aspect of poetry, but just from a reader's perspective and the perspective of someone who has tried writing poetry before, I loved it. Thank you for letting me read it. I really, really enjoyed that. So, is this just a little break chapter in the story from the trilateral realms, or is is the entire book poetry? I'm curious. There we go. Yeah, that was a great poem, man. Like as soon as I like kind of whipped my eyes through it real quick, I saw what you said. It was a poem. I saw the elements of what it was. I'm like, all right, some dark fantasy background music, and some and the right take on the right kind of voice. Okay, yeah, no, I could dig that. I could dig that. Whoo! So let's see. At the end, I will give my impression of all the stories that I have read as well. Slightly more. Well, that was the shortest. If you have something else for me to read, man, I'll get to it on another video. But I'd love to read something else from you, man. Don't give anything away for free. But if you want me to like shout out your work or read your stories on screen, I would be honored if you would allow it. But thank you for letting me read this. It was really good, man. I'm so tired. Okay, let's see here. I was told I could read some. Actually, since it just came out, I'm going to read the back of The Black Crown. I have a few others I have permission to read as well, but actually quite a few others. But his book just came out recently, and I'm anxious for other people to read it because I've read a good portion of this book, and it's tremendous. Okay, gotta find the right music real quick. There we go. Yo, John, what's up, man? No, literally, I'm about to just read the back of your book, unless you wanted me to read another part of the book. I'm curious, man. Find the right music here. There we go. All right. So, John, I will read the back of your book. If you wanted to, I could read part of chapter 1 if you wanted, but I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. And I'm doing this because I want to appreciate the stories people. Okay, man. Okay. I will read part of chapter 1, which I have read before. Introducing The Black Crown by John A. Douglas. Ooh, actually, there's that beginning portion. The prologue. That would be perfect, actually. The Black Crown Prologue by John A. Douglas. The Orc City smoldered, burned down in the wake of battle. The ground soaked in a knuckles depth of blood and ash. The savage cries of its defenders, now silent and still as its ruin, was overseen by the architect of its very destruction. The Orc Wars were finally over. "There's nothing more reviled than the Orc," said the Elvish king, marching amidst the masses of the Orc dead. "Extinction is the reward they deserve. Alas, that we must sully our noses with their wretched stench, when it was the human queen they abducted. We do not rest until she is found." The acrid smoke and the stench of death congested the mid-morning air. The streets of the ruined Orc City were strewn with the bodies of its inhabitants. Twin columns of Elvish soldiers marched on the blood-saturated soil, flanking both sides of their king, Sothrin, the Elder Elf, king of Silveria, the resplendent in pristine shining armor. He towered over the elves who guarded him. He narrowed his eyes and scanned in every direction, surveying the carnage laid out before him with contempt in every flicker of his gaze. The ramshackle Orc City smoldered as flames devoured wood and flesh alike. All that was left of it was smoking pyres and bones, the devastation nigh complete. By his command, only the main hall at its epicenter stood untouched. An army with the combined might of every regime in the Crown Pantheon surrounded it. Every banner from across Evergrad flew proud amidst their victory. Sothren looked down his long features at the devastation before him and remained as unmoving as stone. Let's see. He cast his gaze over every horror. Inhaled stench of burned flesh bore witness to the mask of death on each corpse, and not a flinch flickered on his unblemished features. At long last, the Orc menace had been put to heel. "To think creatures such as these can manage to build such a city," came the intrusive comment, spoken by Ardenth, a trusted advisor who was ever in his shadow. The robed elf stepped ahead of him with caution in every movement, picking a path through the labyrinth of burned debris and dead orcs. The honor guard on all sides pressed through the unmoving masses, spearing every corpse to ensure the dead did not hide the living. Though Sothren led the command in sacking the Orc city, his part in the battle was observation only. His sword had not been unsheathed in decades, and had not drawn blood in centuries. Sothren paused, looking about with a terse scowl. Give them no credit. They use human and low-elf slaves, woodworkers, smiths, servile jobs performed at a sword's tip. Nothing more. Ardneth sneered, a look not uncommon to him. Dwarves, perhaps? What dwarf wouldn't want the chance to build? A dwarf would die before lifting a hammer for an orc. Their pride is as deep as their beards are long. Soren did see the odd human or elf in slaves' rags among the corpses. The scale of this city, I admit, surprise. It is vaster than we anticipated. Built quickly, even here in the depths of Dreadmoor. A host this size marching on Havenlore would have been devastating. They could never be a threat to us, Ardent countered, though his bluster wavered when he dwelled on the thought. 20 years of Thorgos's menace are finally at an end. That remains to be seen. Sothren pressed forward, his survey through the war zone. I want to see Thorgos' body for myself. I was told he engaged with our war mage directly, but he and his brothers have yet to be found. There you go. Oh yeah, AC. I can probably do one more story after the prologue for the Black Crown. So AC, if you want me to do a portion of one of your book, or of maybe one of your short stories, just let me know, and I'll see about doing it after I'm done here. Your counsel is wise, Ardneth, but your underestimation of the orc tactics has ever blinded your judgment. Forgive me, sir, if my counsel has ever failed you. Failure would be the orcs walking through the remains of our city, not the other way around. King Sothren paused and looked aside to Ardneth. This will hold for later. For now, we search for the Nemerian Queen. It is necessary, John. I agree. It gives a good promise of what's to come and offers enough prehistory to allow the person to be immersed in the world. I thought it was one of the best prologues I've read in the Iron Age, I'll be frank. His voice trailed as a white-winged steed descended from above, bearing an armored elf on its back. The majestic steed landed, and the elf dismounted, taking his battle-damaged helm off. His young, handsome, elvish face was framed by honey-gold locks. His strained features were fair, but the weathered lines in his grimace spoke more of his time in battle than in comfort. The resemblance between him and the king was unmistakable. Ooh, hold on, scoot that forward. Son, the king said with pride. The Sky Knife fought well, the prince grunted. The prospect of ending decades of conflict with the orcs stoked a fire in many hearts, especially the humans. How did they fare, Prince Valcor? Asked Ardneth. They took the vanguard against the city walls while the Sky Knife distracted the orcs from the skies. The prince turned a scowl on him. I was there, Ardneth. You needn't remind me of things I already know. The humans bore the brunt of the casualties. Their dead number in the thousands. And ours? Sothren asked. Some pockets of fighting are still ongoing, but I'd wager several hundred at most with as many injured. Alas, the Sky Knife has taken heavy losses, father. Our distraction at dawn worked. The ground forces breached the city with little resistance. I dare say the attack would have succeeded without our sacrifice. But less than half remain. It pains me to suffer their loss. The king tilted his head down, as his scowl dug into his face. We had 5 hand of Pegasi cavalry and riders strong. It could be 100 years or more before that strength returns to their number. Ardeneth and Prince Valcor remained silent. The famed Pegasus Knights were not merely elves on winged horseback, but the most highly trained of all of King Sothran's forces. Deadly in almost any form of combat, they were his personal command, and he their most capable warrior. But he had not seen the need to ride at their head for this battle. Valcor rode in his stead. Sothran tilted his head back up, his regality once more in place. And the Arcane's order, Magi? Many slain, with the Orc Magus and the Warlord Thorgoth engaged with the Golden Mask. Most Orcs were little match for the Order's mages, but the chaos of battle can cripple untrained Magi. Their numbers will be stretched thin for some time. Sothran nodded, concerned little with the Arcane Order. Word of the Golden Mask's feats here will resonate throughout the Crown Pantheon. They'll know the Golden Mask works at the behest of Silveria, and it will stifle dissent from the other crowns. The slight smirk on his face was barely contained. Ardeneth shared the king's satisfaction. We were some distance, Prince Valcor, but we could hear the overture of the Golden Mask's might. Was it a bold spectacle up close? The prince's dark expression told the other 2 elves more than words could say. Valcor spoke in a lowered tone and said, 200 years I've lived, much of it on the battlefield. I've seen many magics in my time, but nothing like what the Golden Mask unleashed. It was horrifying. Ardeneth shared a pleased look with the king. Thorgoth and his orc horde were equally horrifying, sire, Sothran said, speaking boldly for all to hear. It was far past time for this conflict to conclude. Where are Thorgoth and his brothers? The orc warlord and the magus engaged in battle not long after it started. He spilled more elvish blood than any other. He met the Golden Mask in close combat in the commons near the main hall, and fought the war mage hand to hand, bolstered by the magus's cursed spellcraft. As I've said, I've seen many a magic in my time, but none this powerful. Every soldier within sprinting distance couldn't flee fast enough. Those who were near said each struck a killing blow to the other. A noise of displeasure rattled in King Sothran's throat. My war mage is dead! Valcor shook his head. Badly wounded, but still alive. And again, I ask, what of Thorgoth? The prince pointed to the distance, past the ruinous heap of the city's walls and towards twisting, towering trees, gnarled underbrush of the forest beyond the city. Alive, but only just, fled with his brothers in the chaos afterwards. We suspect they ran into the deep valley. I have men in pursuit now. In the wilds of Dreadmore are just as dangerous as orcs, and twice as treacherous to venture. Sothran gave a curt nod. I want him dead, without question. Sire, even if he's not found, his numbers are far beyond recovery. He would need decades to replenish those slain today, said Ardeneth. He'll have that number in less time if he remains alive, said the Elvish king. His name is a rallying cry to every orc across the face of Allspire. If they know he is alive after this, they'll march to him twice as fast. Orc blood feuds are eternal. If we act now and hunt those who remain, they won't have descendants to carry the grudge. From beyond this victory, we can hunt the orc to extinction if we commit to the effort. The orcs' losses number in the tens of thousands. Their best warriors and soldiers. What remains will never threaten our kingdoms again. Our numbers lost today will have saved countless more, and now Numeria will bend their knees to me. We have a human army at our beck and call. He looked between the two of them and gave a triumphant smirk. Today has been a victory on many fronts. Now then, what news of the Numerian queen? The sound of footfalls drew their attention as an elf soldier ran up the street towards them. He came to a halt, bowing hastily. Sire, we found her. Yep, sounds like the Black Crown. Yo, Maji! What up? The main hall of the Orc City stood 3 stories tall, a monument for the remaining orcs' final stand, now surrounded by armored troops of elves, dwarf, and human alike. The doors to the hall were a splintered ruin. The bodies of defending orc warriors lay scattered in unison with Silverian and Numerian knights, all littering the approach to its entrance. King Sulthrin, Ardeneth, and Prince Valcor arrived to a muted stir of humanity. Though victorious, the troops milled in anticipation, their gazes held to their fallen kin. But the work to move them halted. Their casual stances stiffened to attention once the nobility arrived. An ebony-skinned human woman approached them. Her short, close-cropped mane was disheveled with dried blood and sweat. Her armor, damaged in places, still shone immaculately. Her hand crossed over the V emblazoned on her chest plate as she saluted. Your Majesty, the hall has been secured, paid for in the blood of 4 knights valiant, a half-hand of magi, and rounds of soldiers. The orcs dug in deep and fought like beasts. Sulthrin inclined his head. My condolences, valiant. Her mouth fixed into a tight line. Would that your golden mask war mage done the work for us? Had the golden mask intervened, the hall would be a smoldering crater. Inform the soldiers they may remove their dead now. I was told she's been found. She gave him a terse nod. I've ordered 2 knights valiant guarding the room. I found her as we purged the orcs. She was told to stay put. None are allowed near the hall until you give the order otherwise. King Sulthrin turned to his trusted advisor and his son, fixing them both with a gaze. Ardeneth with me. Valcor, take as many as you need to hunt down Thorgoth and his brothers. Put an end to this. Kill them. Then stick their heads on pikes for every orc to see right here at the foot of his hall. The king swept past throngs of soldiers, all backing away to make room. Ardeneth followed closely as the prince departed to carry out his orders. Yo, guilty! Inside the main hall, the stench of death and orc was overwhelming. Ardeneth held a cloth to his nose as he and the king strode slowly, allowing the honor guard to clear the path, tossing bodies aside after spearing them. The inside was a cluttered disaster of swords, axes, and weaponry. Hold on, I need to switch the song. This is not working. Better. Shattered bottles of elixirs and liquor leaked their contents on the floor. The bodies of elves and humans who had braved the suicidal task of storming the orcs' main hall were being carried out by their knight brethren. Soldiers' heads bowed in reverence for heroes fallen as they passed by. Without them, the siege would have been longer and bloodier. King Sulthrin gave only a nod, moved by none of it. He would have the honor of speaking at their funerals once he returned. They would be laid to rest so reverent flowers could bloom for their families. Their statues would gleam over their graves, legends to future knights, immortalized on the tongues of tale-tellers for generations to come. They marched up the stairs and down a wide corridor until the two of them came to a large door guarded by two knights valiant. One, a heavily armored dwarf with a warhammer in each hand, his broad frame so wide he took up most of the corridor. An elf in a loose uniform robe of deep cobalt stood flanking him, hands bearing a staff glowing with arcane power. Both wore the emblazoned V on their left breast, but the elf's was set against a white flame, designating him as a mage of the arcane order. The moment they saw the king, they dipped their heads reverently and stepped aside. Not a word from their lips. Sothran opened the thick oaken door and stepped inside the room. Ah, good call. An expansive down bed dominated the center of the room. Weaponry and macabre orcs trinkets, such as skulls, animal heads, pelts, and carved bones lined all of the walls. It surprised the king to find a bed in this barbaric place. To think of the infamous orc warlord slept on a bed stirred his contempt for their mimicry of civilized life. She sat on the edge of the bed, a human woman draped in a cloak of wolf fur thrice her size. She clutched the edges together as her eyes of deep azure drifted to the figure in the doorway, and realization sank in. Slowly, she stood to her feet. King Solden? She said, her voice cracking. He inclined her head. Queen Serana, are you true? She lifted her hand, fingers spread, and showed him a golden mark set into her palm. In response, he did the same, his own golden sigil brought to bear. She took a few halting steps towards him. Her raven black hair spilled around her head as she sighed and dipped low in a bow. She looked rattled, but otherwise in good health. Even in her disheveled state, she was a woman of striking beauty for a human. We all thought you dead months ago. I am relieved to see the whispers of our spies were true and you are unharmed, Sothran said. She parted the furs wrapped over her slowly, and his eyes glanced down, lips drawn into a tight line. He let out a terse sigh. My dear, I am truly sorry. We came as soon as we could. Let us get you home. Miles away from the scene of the orc massacre, the thundering sound of heavy footfalls heralded a round of orcs in rapid escape. The bedraggled few had made a mad dash through the mist-infested woods into the haggard lands of the deep valley. Clad in their scavenged and scorched armor, their bloodied faces turned towards the three largest orcs leading the charge. They held their pace hard, their breath ragged as they drove forward as one unit. Not one dared utter a complaint, even as the charge led them from the vast greens of the valley's upper forest to the dark, twisted wood, occupying its lower hook in the shadow of the mountain, Sorakol. Here, the trees, leafless and gnarled, curled together in a drifting fog to form a canopy that kept the sun from reaching its barren floor. Their charge came to a halt before a pair of curved stone spires, leading up from the ground like tusks. A foreboding path between them. Oh, what? Excuse me, what was that? Yeah, not quite, Maji. The more you read, the more you realize, like, these aren't the nice, kindly elves. These are like the uppity elves, like higher than thou, Maji-chan. Don't speak to me, human. You are not worthy to gaze upon this figure, let alone address it with your human tongue. Anyway, back to the orcs. This is very cheery music for what's happening right now. Having read this before. The stone tusk gate was as far as any of them were willing to travel. As the orcs caught their wind, the three largest broke from the pack and took rest on a fallen tree. One, adorned in the vibrant paints and accoutrements of a chieftain's rank, held his hand to a gaping, seared wound in his chest. Deep gashes and ruinous burns, grievous to behold, marred his body. It seemed miraculous that he still stood, but his shoulders slumped in the effort to remain upright. The smaller of the three came to the chieftain's right side and inspected him. The side of his face was a tapestry of blood and fresh wounds. He was draped in a hooded robe, with a long, thin gray beard, and clutched a thick staff in a gloved hand. He needn't inspect the wounds for long. In the thick, guttural orcish tongue, he said, "Thorgoth, you must heal, brother. Your wounds will prove mortal." The largest of the three approached to the chieftain's left, a massive brute with a scowl as deep as he was tall, his chest covered in a great dark beard.
"Use your spells, Crannock, or have the gods truly abandoned you?"
"The god's magic has its limits, as do I, Gorvok," the robed orc spat. "It took all of my strength to keep Thorgoth shielded from that elf mage with the gold mask. If I cast one more spell, it will take my life." Gorvok smiled.
"Then what use are you? Is your brother, your warlord, not worth it? Enough!"
Thorgoth, as wounded as he was, shoved his muscled arms between his two brothers. He met Gorvok's sneer with his own.
"Crannock cannot keep me alive. I will not hear another word of this bickering."
His threatening posture held for a moment, but his heavy, rattling breath spoke of the effort it took. Silence took them all as the day's events weighed down on the survivors. Dread settled over their weary forms. Most of the assembled orcs were too downtrodden to be angered over the loss against such overwhelming odds. Even the three brothers, in their years of campaigning against the Crown Pantheon, had never seen such force directed against them. Crannock sighed, leaning on his staff.
"They must have been truly desperate to call down the might of so many crowns against us. Many sigils, Nymeria, the Phaland, Silveria, Nordralf, the Dynasty."
Thorgoth's voice rattled.
"Not many. The Crown Pantheon emptied its armies into our valley. I thought it would be a generation before they found our city. Hidden as it was, how desperate were they to ally as they did against us?"
Thorvok paced before them, snapping in the air.
"We must rally, fight back, and gather our forces to retaliate." "What forces?"
Thorgoth snapped weakly.
"Our city is in ruins. Our armies lay gutted in the streets. What forces have left will fled?"
Crannock pointed out.
"The Crag Claws were gone before the Forced Warning Horn, not a great orc amongst the dead."
That accusation hung damningly in the air.
"Betrayal?"
Gorvok said.
"They brought the elves and the human armies down on us. We must their lust for our forests and hunting grounds have always boiled beneath their thick hides. Who else would inherit the valley if our tribes were wiped out?"
Both Crannock and Thorgoth shared a look. The absence of their rival village at the battle was infuriating. But moot in the face of their monumental loss. They had escaped, and just barely. Many orcs had not and the devastation to their city. Their civilization was nigh complete.
We have to go back,
Gorvak said, breathless in his fury.
First to take back our city, and once we've driven the wretches out of Dreadmore, we'll wrench the Cragclaws out of their mountain caves and flay them for their treachery.
He spun when Thorgoth's hand fell on his shoulder and paused, knowing better than to turn his rage on his brother. Thorgoth let a defeated breath escape his massive lungs.
I want nothing more than to make our enemies suffer for this. But we must face what is real. Our war has ended. 20 years we have raged against the Crown Pantheon. It was inevitable they would unite against us. Our legions are gone. Our city burns. My children, no doubt, slain like dogs. And my...
Thorgoth coughed, doubling over as his breath rattled with every heave. Flecks of blood splattered across his lips. He growled in frustration and stood back up straight.
This loss will not be tolerated. You know what must be done. Is that not right, Magnus?
Gorvak postured over him, speaking loudly. Cranach looked between the two of them. The tension between the massive orcs, blood brothers, and lifelong rivals palpable. Ever ready to come to blows in an instant.
Gorvak, now is not the time for Karkata. It is time to regroup, to heal, to reunite our scattered kin. Now is the time for Karkata,
Gorvak bellowed.
Thorgoth's loss has proven his inability to lead. We have lost the city, our army, and all victories won are now for nothing. All because you keep that queen for a pet instead of sending her back in parts. I invoke the right of Karkata.
A flash of rage, and Thorgoth's hand shot to Gorvak's throat, clutching with all his might. Gorvak gurgled, his hands tearing at the warlord's iron grasp. The grip tightened. Gorvak's eyes wide, as his throat was closed, but not crushed. Thorgoth leaned in, glared into Gorvak's fearful eyes.
Even as I stand at the gates of the gods, I could crush your throat and send us both into glory.
His hand lessened its grip on Gorvak's, broke free, gasping for air.
You have long coveted my title, brother. Take it. Lead what is left of our people into your golden age.
The spite laced on his last words lingered as Thorgoth turned his back and walked away. Ahead of him, the stone tusk gate loomed, and its descending path beyond, shrouded in a thick mist.
That is not the way of Karkata,
Gorvak said.
We must fight to the death.
Thorgoth glanced back.
I am not long for death's embrace. Take my title and go. Or tell the tribes how you defeated your brother after an elf weakened him first.
Gorvak sneered and looked back at the orc troops watching their exchange. He would have to kill them all to keep such a secret, and they all knew it. When he looked back to his brother, he saw Thorgoth heading towards the stone husk gate.
I will raise an orc horde 10 times greater than yours, brother. When I am done, your name will be forgotten, your legacy erased for the cowardice you've shown today.
Thorgoth cried after him. Cranach stood next to Thorgoth and heard his brother utter.
Dullard.
Magnus placed his hand on Thorgoth's shoulders. It burned his blood for Thorgoth to go to the gods' gates, leaving their people in the hands of Gorvok. But there were precious few options.
Where will you go, Thorgoth? Into the deep valley's roots? The terrors there?
I would rather go to the God's Gate, fighting the terrors of the Abyss, than die at Gorvak's hand. He is too stupid to lead our people anywhere, but the same endless cycle that has fractured us since the God Sorcerer's death.
Kranich pleaded.
Let me give my my last breath to call the gods' favor and heal you. At least then our people have a leader to unite them again. There is yet more you can do. This cannot be how it ends.
Thorgoth let a heavy, rattling breath leave his lungs. The way his shoulders slumped, his defeated posture, the stare that went into his mind's eye. The warlord set his glare on the mist-shrouded path ahead.
I have lost all that I built, and something I can never regain again. Were I to stay, I would live with a red-hot dagger forever lodged in my chest. At worst, the armies of the Crown Pantheon will hear I am alive, and set their knights and mages against us again. You must stay, brother. Rebuild your temple. Give our people faith. They shall need it.
He glanced back to Gorvok, already gloating to the orc troops. Thorgoth gave his brother a final clap on the back, and hefted his axe on his shoulder, striding into the lower valley until the mist swallowed him. Kranich stood at the precipice of the gate, fighting the urge to follow Thorgoth into certain death. He could not tear himself from the spot until a hard clap on his arm spun him around. He looked up into Gorvak's glowering visage.
Where do your loyalties lie, Magnus? With me or with the dead?
Kranich set his jaw and inclined his head.
I am yours to command, War Chief.
Gorvak snorted at him and spun, marching off to espouse the start of his reign. Kranich glanced below, seeing a trail of blood in Thorgoth's wake. Blood pooled in the imprint of Thorgoth's footstep. Deftly, Kranich kneeled and took a vial from his pouch. He dipped the vial into the puddle of blood until it filled, then corked it shut.
Kranich, we leave!
Gorvak's order, the first of many to come, brought Kranich to his feet. He fell in step behind his new chieftain. The weeks following the decimation of the orc horde became a time of celebration and revelry not seen in a generation. The Elvish king traveled between the kingdoms, compromising the continent of Evergrad. And though all had contributed to the battle, Southron was sure there would be no one ruler who would take credit for themselves. As the armies trickled back into their kingdoms, and the soldiers back into their homes, the news traveled like wildfire. The Orc Wars were over. Warlord Thorgoth and his brothers were driven into the wilds of the Dreadmore Valley, their horde either rotting openly at the site of the final battle, or scattered to the ends of every wild and dark wood enough to hide them. Where returning soldiers went, celebration commenced. They heralded the victorious as heroes, the fallen enshrined as legends, sung by tavern patrons and songstresses alike. Life returned to a peaceful normal as the threat of the orc vanished. The shroud of fear that one would wake and find an orc army at their doorstep was gone. Children who had never lived without this fear were given a gift of new peace. Those who had lost their loved ones in the war now slept with the contentment that justice had been delivered. They carried news of victory to their loved ones' gravesites, so that the reverent flowers would bloom in the soil of their sacrifice. From the capital cities to the distant towns and villages all across the continent, the taverns emptied their ale stores in celebration. In a month's time, the victory tour brought Sothran to the land of Nemeria, the only kingdom of the Crown Pantheon ruled by humans. With little fanfare to announce his arrival, he was escorted through the warm stone halls to their capital's castle, Canlin's Keep. He ignored the stares of the human soldiers that lined every corridor. The guards said nary a word in his presence, waiting until he and his honor guard were long out of sight to whisper to each other. In every room he entered, every voice went still, and all eyes drew to his presence. He commanded the attention of all without the utterance of a single word. He swept into the throne room and found the king on one knee, his head down in the ears of two young children. As Sothran approached, the king stood to his feet, hands on his children's shoulders. He forced a smile on a weary face already stricken with lines, despite his youth. Even his dark hair had grown gray well before its time. The human king looked up from his bow and said, "Your Majesty, children, show your respect." Sothran watched as the young children, a raven-haired young girl and boy, both the same age, bowed in quick, inelegant succession, and then promptly ran off to off at their father's urging. Sothran waited until they were gone before asking, "Are your walls safe, Bright Sorn?" "As safe as can be. What need do we have for secrecy now that our enemies are dead?" King Janar chuckled dryly, frowning when the elder elf did not find the notion as humorous as he. "They are safe, I assure you. I am glad you came so I could give you my deepest thanks for all you have done to return my beloved wife to me. I was so sure she was dead, I didn't believe the reports until she was home again." His words trailed off as his eyes drifted. "And with that concluded, we can discuss what Numeria will give in exchange for the return of their queen," said the Sothran pointedly. Janar's brow furrowed. "Numeria led the front lines of the battle. We suffered the highest casualties of all the Crown Pantheon's forces. Over half my soldiers died in Dreadmore. Our cavalry is all but wiped out. It will take years to recover our strength." Sothran was unmoved. "Your vanguard did well, but Silveria suffered losses unequal to mere soldiers and cavalry. I lost more than half of the Sky Knife. Elvish Pegasus riders, my son's own personal command. It takes generations to train both Knight and Pegasus in the art of winged combat, and it will be 100 years at least before those stables are fully stocked. The Arcane Order lost rounds of mages. Their diminished ranks will embolden an unrestricted magic use. 7 Knight Valiants dead. 7. Janar's words caught in his throat. The enormity of the last statement weighed on him. No warrior entire... Whoa, hold on. Did I miss a page? No warrior in the entirety of Allspire was more capable than a Knight's Valiant. Their skills were unmatched, and their heroic order unrivaled. 1 Knight Valiant was worth 100 knights. "It was not by my hand those deaths occurred," Janar replied. "It was by your requests that they were dispatched. Your case before the Crown Pantheon was a compelling and convincing performance. You convinced many around the worthiness of your cause. It was your efforts that summoned this accord, and it shall be Numeria that gives tribute for this favor." Janar's scowl spoke for him. Sothran's impassible glare betrayed nothing as he continued. "The hand of the Crown Pantheon does not come freely. We suffered much for your queen, and you will give both tithe and soldier in recompense." Janar's lungs emptied, and his will withered. His emotional plea to the Crown Pantheon and the entirety of the Allspire nobility had indeed been a stirring clarion call to cooperative unity. They conceded and joined. And now what was he to do after other kingdoms had bled and died for him? His hand brushed through his short beard, but his every fidget only delayed his inevitable nod. I, Nymeria, shall be beholden to your sigil, sire. King Sothran, impassive to the last, gave Janar a smoldering grin. What are friends for? Janar's eyes burned in fiery disdain, a furnace of restraint, staying hand and tongue alike. Sothran gave his contempt no more thought than a stray hair in his vision. He waved a dismissive hand. Your queen as well? What of... His voice trailed off, the insinuation hanging in the air. She is healthy, as far as the physicary can tell. She will not speak of it to me, I fear. I'll not force her to relive such memories. As for... His hand waved over his abdomen. I asked Physicary Perseus to provide her something to end it. A drought he knows. Moonshade, I believe. But she has thus far refused, and I'm not of a mind to tell her what to do given what she has endured. But she cradles her belly the same way as she did when pregnant with our twins. I fear she has grown attached. Surely she does not mean to keep it. Have your Physicary slip the draught into her drink and be done with it. Not so easy. He says the elixir is bitter, and its taste too potent to disguise. She pours all her own drink and has tasters for her food. She was never so paranoid, even if it were slipped to her. The Physicary says orc brats are hardy, and the chance of it working is slight. And if she keeps it, then what? A half-orc bastard in your court. The Numerian king gave a short scoff. An orc brat brightsworn. The very thought is lunacy. It would not be tolerated by me or my people. One look at the squalling thing and she'd be begging us for us to take it from her sight. Mark my words, nothing with greenskins shall ever find sanctuary in these lands. And the ending of the prologue for the Black Crown. John, thank you for the privilege of reading it on stream. I hope everyone who hasn't read it yet will get to join it now. I hope everyone go. In fact, I'll find the link here real quick. It's not that hard. Let's see. No. How about Amazon? I will find that link because this book is truly excellent. That is the best prologue I've seen in the Iron Age so far, and that's no small feat. Black Crown. Gotta be careful how I spell that. It brings up some weird stuff if you don't spell it right. Copy and paste. Boom. All right, guys, there is the link for The Black Crown by John A. Douglas. Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. It's hard to know exactly how to do orcs other than, like,
Do the voice changer. Brother, we will fight here and now. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
something like that. You got to add a little gravel. You got to add a little. I wanted Thorvac to sound a little more kingly, so I tried to take out a little basically Gorvak's voice, but a little more kingly, a little more controlled. But John, I hope I did your story justice. It was a fun read, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Woo! All right, now AC, I promised if you were still here that I would read another one of your stories if you want. Alas, if you're still here, just tell me what you want me to read and I'll read it. In the meantime, how is everyone doing? How you guys doing? Of course, man. It's no problem at all. I'm happy to do it. That's why I'm here. I've written books in the past, but there's no there's no point in crying over spilt milk. Someday I will have stories to share with you all, and I sincerely hope it will touch you in a way that is meaningful. But until then, I am going to do everything I can to support you guys. I'll be honest. Now one thing I said is at the end I would take and give my impressions of all the stories I read here tonight. Let's see. That was Chatsu. Where the first one was let's see. That was Pugilism. The first chapter called Pugilism in the book Masks of Steel by Tyrus McHale. It's featured on Royal Road. I thought the story was well written. I think some of the language needs to be altered or explained, seeing as he is like all of these creatures are mammals, like various anthropomorphic kind of animals. Calling them human or mankind just doesn't quite feel right. And the thing is, he is conscious of this because in some things he did change the language, but in this case, I think he needs to go back through and maybe adjust that language to be a little more animal centric. You know what I mean? But other than that, I enjoyed the combat. It was a little more detailed than I typically like it, but this wasn't real combat. This was a sporting match of sorts. And so his consideration for how a fight usually goes and the advantages of a trained fighter versus just a brawler, I thought that was really on point, and I really appreciated his the way he described the airships in his story, as especially since I have airships in some of my stories as well. And then I read A Creature Takes Flight, a poem from the Trilateral Realms on Shatsu's Substack. And it was an excellent poem, especially I was because I was able to glance through it real quick before starting. I was able to put on some dark fantasy music. In fact, I'll turn that down a little bit and read it in like imagine a dark Dr. Seuss kind of tempo, and that's what I was going for. Yo, Jeff Potts, what's up, brother? Oh, hey man, thanks for popping by. I really appreciate it. Peace out, brother. Boom. And then I have read this before, and thank God I did. Having read a story before, and how do I explain this? When you're reading a story on stream for the first time, and you've never read it before, it takes a lot to. It's a lot of mental work to try to figure out what all the voices should sound like and what accents should be or should not be there while you're reading it on the fly. It's a lot to keep track of. But in the case of the Black Crown, since I've read a good portion of this sucker before. Yeah, probably right around, not quite halfway, but yeah. But that helped a lot, and having a knowledge of the story beforehand adds a lot to the experience. So I think from now on, I'll try to, at least with half of the stories I read, get an idea of what the story is before I read it on the stream. Alas, it is getting late for me. I have a lot of work tomorrow, and I'm getting tired. So, any questions before we call it a night? Oh, not the biggest reading stream we've had either, but I had a lot of people popping in. We had Maji, we had John A. Douglas, we had the Pritchard people, we had Chatsu, of course, Guilty Gearhead. Down. Yep, and then a few others in the very, very beginning too. We had AS come in for a little bit. Skunk's Workshop was listening to it while working on art. I appreciate all and any of you who were able to make it. It was a lot of fun. But alas, let's pause this and do this right. Nope. Gotta send this off proper. Let's see. All right, guys. Thank you for sticking around. Oh, wait. Wrangler wanted my opinion for a blurb. So what is that? What is that, Magi? What blurb? I can take a look at it when I'm done, maybe later tonight. But I'm pretty tired, so we're gonna call the stream here. Alas, go out, create, support creators, and all hail the Iron Age. Woo!